Welcome to Album X-Ray with Ralph and Ganley.
Yes, hello.
Hi. We named the show. Well, we couldn't come up with the name of a show last week, but in the production of the show, in post-production, I came up with the name Album X-Ray after I added the X-ray effect to our video.
I liked that because we're going to be peering deep into albums with very little insight into music history and knowledge and all that.
I think we have enough music history. Enough, not a lot. I mean, we didn't work on any of these albums.
No.
Although it would be convenient had we. We've listened to them. I think that's...
I think that makes us experts.
Yeah, I think so.
I've got a Wikipedia page, and I listened to it a bunch of times.
Right. I've read the all music review of it, so I'm fairly well versed in an album. This week's album is are you drinking tea?
No, whiskey.
Oh, okay.
I have a tea glass because I don't have a shot glass.
Oh, okay. I mean, it works like that too. Mm-hmm. If it's a small tea glass, it's also.
I'm also drinking a Stone IPA as 420 special brew, about a month and a half out of season, because I forgot that it was in the back of my refrigerator.
Does it taste any different?
It doesn't taste very good. No, it was an IPA that was meant to be drank on 420 to maintain freshness, and now it's like a whole month and a half. What day is it?
It is 6/8 today.
Yeah, so it's pretty bad.
Yeah. Well, it's getting used. So that's
well, no, it's definitely.
You don't want it to go because I asked you prior to the show if it would come around again in season next 420, like it's a flower that blooms every 420. No, that's not how it works.
Like a werewolf?
Yes.
Every 420, it gets more delicious? No, IPAs just tend to start to taste worse.
That's not...
But this isn't a beer review show. This is an album review show.
It is an album review show. This week we're doing Bleach, Nirvana's debut album. Most people... it's off of their first album. Most people don't own it.
Right.
Probably the first song most people heard from Bleach, despite it being Nirvana's first album, would be about a girl. And I'll give some quick statistics about the album before we get started. It came out on June 15th, 1989, so we're coming up on the anniversary.
It's an 80s album. It's crazy to think of.
So weird, like Poison was still releasing albums at this time. And we're coming up on the 28-year anniversary. You can see here we have the cover, which has Jason Everman, who played guitar on the album. He's not on any other Nirvana full-length studio albums. Mm-hmm. And we'll start the album right now with the first track. So if you're listening along, because it's hard to hear the album on here because of various United States intellectual property rights, start listening to your own copy of the album now.
Gotta love Chris Novoselic's bass tone.
Yeah. There's
But, sorry, where were we?
We were talking about Blue, the first album on Bleach.
Oh, yeah.
BLEU, not the color blue. Like the past tense of blow.
Right.
I think the lyrics are vulgar. If you listen to them, if you read them, the story behind the lyrics on this album are Kurt Cobain wrote them the day before the album was to be recorded. If you believe that story, as Kurt Cobain tells quite a few tall tales in his life, as Buzz Osborne would point out.
Right.
Do you believe that though? Could it be you can't write 13 songs on your way to writing to recording an album the following day?
I don't think so. I think you know what it is, and here's something I think I'll go a little bit. I love talking psychology as far as bands, because musicians are some of the most neurotic people on the planet, and I know this from experience with dealing with other musicians. Musicians love to pretend that stuff is coming off the cuff. You know, it's why, when you see, like, freestyle rapping, they're like, all right, I'm going to freestyle just something right off the top of my head. And then it's inevitably always something that, like, you can see in another freestyle video somewhere else. Like, they have stuff. But musicians like to pretend that they're just coming up with stuff off the top of their head. And I think part of the reason in Kurt Cobain's case was that I don't think he was really confident about his lyric writing yet. So I think if you say, like, oh, I just wrote it a day before, and, like, so if anybody called him out for a certain lyric being stupid, which no one's going to do, because the lyrics are actually not that bad at all, I think that's like a defensive coping mechanism. Like, no one can make fun of my lyrics because I just wrote them the day before. But I think that's a load of bullshit. Especially after they published Kurt Cobain's journals, and it showed that there were multiple drafts of a lot of his songs. It's like, why would that exist then?
I guess it's a part of the lore of the album.
Right.
This album did not sell very well. It did not chart when it first came out,
No.
compared to its follow-up, Nevermind. But in subsequent years after Nirvana became a huge worldwide success, people went out, and not as many went out, but picked it up. The reissue in their 20-year anniversary charted. So it took 20 years, but it charted. But then again, that was like, you like Floyd the Barber?
Yeah,
the Floyd the Barber riff is heavy. This is
the whole album is so heavy. It's so good.
It sounds like this came out a year after Soundgarden's debut album, and it has like, they're both sub pop albums, and it has that. They're also produced by like Ultra Mega OK is not produced by the same producer as this. This is produced by Jack Edino, who produced Screaming Life for Soundgarden, also Mudhoney, Screaming Trees, L7, Bruce Dickinson, and then High on Fire later on. So
wow.
He's done a lot of sub-pop albums. I enjoy this story of Floyd the Barber. I don't think you could have written this in a day. It's about the Andy Griffith Mayberry people.
Right.
And the murdering of Kurt going into Floyd the Barber's barbershop and mentioning all the characters of the show. And gross things like that.
Right.
And then eventually at the end being cut up and buried in Aunt Bee's muff. I just spoiled the end of the song. It's not
spoilers, Christ.
Yeah, not a lot of songs have the word muff in the end of them, but I mean, Nirvana went there in 1989.
Well, you know what we can talk about too is like, why do you think that this album didn't rocket them to stardom, whereas Nevermind did?
This is not a commercially viable. This isn't a radio-friendly unit shifter, to borrow one of their song titles.
Right.
Like the next song might be, but like I don't. This
That's
is the original.
Like, there's singles from it, like it's just, yeah. Like I just don't think. Do you think the world just wasn't ready? Because it is like a thing. Like the early '90s, it seemed kind of primed for something like Nirvana to get bigger.
Yeah, 1989. Like what else was coming out in 1989?
Wasn't the Guns N' Roses
Appetite for Destruction came out in I think 87. It was starting to get big in 88. So like there was really no cracking that like hard rock. This is not among that. This is
right. I'm just saying Guns N' Roses were kind of, everyone always points to like, like the death of like glam metal. And while it is true Nirvana definitely put the nail in glam metal, I think there were cracks happening anyway. I mean, there was Guns N' Roses was really popular. There was some college alternative rock, like REM was really big.
Yeah.
Where was I going with this?
Why this didn't rocket them to stardom in 1989? We weren't ready for it.
I think part of it might be the production value.
Yeah.
It's just not as slick as Nevermind would be.
Well, this is the original version. There's the charting 20-year anniversary, which is remastered, which I don't have the copy of, but if you read, it says somewhere the amount of money that they borrowed. Here it is.
$5.
It says, recorded in Seattle at reciprocal recording by Jack Edino for $600. So
wow.
Supposedly the story goes is that Kurt, I believe, borrowed money from Jason Everman or Chad Channing. Nirvana also had a Chad in them too, which I think is and his drumming is noticeably different than Dave Grohl's drumming on the next album. I think that might also be with it too. I don't know how much drumming meant to people back in 1989, but like there's a stark difference between the like light drumming on this album and like the explosive like Dave Grohl drumming on Nevermind.
Drummers do very oftentimes end up making the band, and I think with Nirvana, that definitely was the case. It made a great band amazing, or I should say, it made a very good band great.
Right, you could legends. Nevermind opened people up to this album, which is kind of they only released 3 full-length studio albums, so like this is being the first one. About a Girl, which is on right now, was like a huge FM radio hit for a long time as the unplugged version.
Right.
So,
was this the song that he said that he was trying to copy John Lennon's songwriting style?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah. It's got a very Beatles sort of sound to it. That's the thing, though. It's kind of strange to me, like, this track didn't become a hit back then, you know?
It took another 5 years for the unplugged version, or 6 years, I guess, because that album came out in 1995, I think. Mm-hmm. So, hearing this version of it for the first time, I'm like, wow, that's something. Because, like, obviously we all heard the unplugged version first. Because, as I mentioned before, most people don't own this album.
This album has the same sort of thing that Green Day had. What was it? That album that came out, Kerplunk, which came out technically before Dookie. A lot of these bands, when they got mainstream success, then their earlier album would... School, great song.
Yes.
One of the first songs I think I learned how to play on guitar. What was I saying?
Green Day Kerplunk.
Oh, a lot of times these bands in the 90s, these like alternative and punky bands, they would get really big. They would have a big breakout album, and then they would then their earlier album would suddenly start to become really popular. So when I was a kid, I thought that this was like Nirvana's like second or third album. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't know that it existed, and then one day it started showing up again, like, at the forefront of, like, CD stores, and you were like, oh, shit, Bleach? I didn't even know this was an album.
When you're a kid, the order you buy albums in is the order that they're released.
That they were released in, right, exactly.
So if you bought Nevermind first, that's their debut album. Like, I'm sure when you bought Offspring Smash, which I'm assuming you have a copy of, you thought that was their debut album, even though that's, I think, their third album or fourth album. So... That's how we kids think.
Right. Us kids. Us 36-year-old kids.
Yeah, But...
Real quick to talk about School, too. This song is actually kind of interesting. It's about the music scene in Seattle that Kurt Cobain said felt like it was like high school again. Which he's about to say, I'm in high school again. The idea of, like, different cliques and stuff like that. So, yeah, he wrote this song as sort of like, oh, this music scene, man, it's just like high school, these people walking around.
That's so weird to think about, like, the Seattle scene being like that, because the Seattle scene you always think of being, like, the one where everybody was included.
Right.
And now he's, like...
Yeah. I'm also pretty sure that he probably was the popular dude in the Seattle scene.
Because, like, when Singles came out, like, Singles is, like, the grunge movie. Like, Nirvana's like, no, we're not going to be in that. And, like, they're not on the soundtrack. They're not in the movie. Right. Like, Eddie Vedder, Chris Cornell, Alice in Chains, like, they're all in the movie. But Nirvana's like, we won't be in it, and we're not on the album. We're the big band now.
Actually, to kind of contradict what I just said, it is actually possible that Kurt Cobain probably was still kind of the loser among his music scene. Just because I've actually read somewhere that, like, Kurt Cobain and Nirvana were kind of looked at as sort of like hicks.
Yeah.
Because they weren't really from Seattle proper. They were from the outskirts in Aberdeen.
Yeah.
And as a result, they were kind of seen as, like, another great bass line. Chris Novoselic, man, doesn't get enough credit. That is a sick bass groove.
And this is their first single, which came out in December of 1988. December of 88? Yeah, November of 88. Sorry. November of 1988. It's a cover of... Why didn't I write the name of the band down? Screaming Blue?
That sounds right.
Something along those lines.
You don't have internet on here?
I do.
Get your internet.
I'm very prepared for the show. Talk about the song.
Look it up. I'm going to mention one thing now that before it gets too far away from where we're talking about it. On the back here, it says, recorded in Seattle at Reciprocal Recording by Jack Endino for $600. That's another one of those things that goes right up there with Kurt Cobain saying that he only wrote the lyrics in a day. It's like a humble brag. It's like, oh yeah, we only recorded this for $600. Like, Kurt Cobain, I think, was so like self-conscious about like people thinking that he was a professional musician.
Yeah, like,
you know what I mean? Like,
we recorded it at a studio, but we didn't spend a lot of money on it.
Spent a lot of money. I wrote the lyrics day before. Really, there's no big deal. You know, what, you like it?
and their Shocking Blue is the name of the band.
Shocking Blue.
I was getting Scream, Dave Grohl's band, mixed up with Shocking Blue. This is their lead single from the album, and it's a cover. And later on, when Nirvana did their Unplugged, Kurt wanted lots of covers peppered in because he was like, oh, well, I don't feel comfortable, stripping down a lot of my songs.
Right.
And I want the buffer of being able to perform but not have people say like, oh, X whatever Nirvana song sounds bad as an Unplugged song. So like they did 3 Meat Puppets songs.
Right.
Like no one knew who the Meat Puppets were until they were on Nirvana Unplugged.
Right.
So they did a David Bowie song, which back in 1994, I don't know how underground that was, but now everybody be like, oh yeah, David Bowie. Yeah, okay.
I don't think teenagers definitely knew it. I mean, it definitely introduced David Bowie to a new group of teenagers, I think.
Probably.
I think really deep album cuts, you know what I mean? Like, I knew who David Bowie was when I was a kid, but I didn't know that song. You know, I didn't know that David Bowie could like with David Bowie, I knew China Girl.
Yeah.
And Let's Dance, you know what I mean? Like, it's more dancey or poppy stuff, you know. I didn't know anything about Ziggy Stardust. None of that.
I think that probably hearing Man Who Sold the World on that album turned me on to David Bowie. This is also a very strange middle of the song.
Noise, guitar solo. Well, Kurt Cobain was interesting. He could do noise with the best of them. Like, you know, like you get
a Thurston Moore type of noise.
Yeah, Thurston Moore type of just sort of like just a fuzz pedal, and I don't know what else he used. I think he used like a phaser fairly often too, or a chorus. One of those weird pedals to make like these just like insane like noise waves.
I think it's an underrated talent of a guitar player to make weird noises.
Yeah.
I've seen Sonic Youth 3 times and Thurston Moore solo once, and they have just a part of their set where they tune the instruments, and I'm just like, this is great.
Yeah,
I'm just watching them tune their instruments. This is great. I'm paying to watch a band get ready for a song, but I like it because it's part of their show. Now After Love Buzz, the song, the album descends kind of into a heavier groove.
Yeah.
I really like I don't know what side of this album is yet, but the back end of this album is very heavy.
Paper Cuts. I was trying to remember the name of this. There's a great footage of them playing this at a record store, on that DVD, that like big box set. I have it somewhere. Not here, but there's a DVD that comes with it, and one of them is them covering this. I think it's one of the few footage they have of them playing with their original drummer. At least, you know, on that DVD.
I'm so heavy. There's nothing really there's a much cleaner sound to everything that they did after this. And that's why I never bought the remastered version, because for some reason in my mind I feel like it's not shoddy production, it's obviously a professionally produced album.
Right.
But something about just the quality of this album adds to its quality to me.
Yeah.
It sounds like something that they really could have recorded live in a garage somewhere.
Right.
It's very
for
home.
$600, that's basically what you're getting. It's basically a glorified garage. If
right.
You're doing it.
Nevermind's great, but it doesn't have the sound of and this is very hellish sounding too.
Yeah.
And they also say the name of their band in the song, which is weird. Like when Metallica says Metallica in here.
We'll kick your ass because we're Metallica.
Yeah. It's weird hearing him say.
What does he say?
Nirvana.
Oh, yeah.
Nirvana.
What do you think this song is about?
Paper cuts?
Getting them? I hate them.
As a musician, is naming songs difficult? Because I've read about Ozzy.
No.
Ozzy doesn't know how to name songs. He just gives them initials and they end up becoming the song name.
Right.
Like this seems like Paper Cuts. Like this song sounds like a Paper Cuts. Like I've been listening to this album since I got this album when I was like 18, and I've been listening to it. I don't know how regularly you listen to an album, but I don't know any of the lyrics on like any of most of the songs at the end. Like I could sing along to other Nirvana albums. I could sing along to Unplugged or Nevermind or In Utero, but like I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on this album. Yeah.
Probably amazing things you can't even comprehend, man. Actually, wait a second. Let's see. Does it come with a lyric sheet?
I don't know. You know,
I don't think this has ever been opened. Let's see. Dun 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 dun. No. There's just a picture of Chris Novoselic making a bass face.
Bass face? That's a bass face.
Bass face. And then the iconic picture of Kurt Cobain after jumping into a drum kit.
I love that picture. They would destroy their stuff and then fix it.
Right.
They wouldn't get new stuff. They would fix it, and they would spend time putting their instruments back together after destroying them after every show.
It's pretty great.
Yeah. Bands don't break their own stuff anymore. I've never been to a show where a band's trashed their own stuff. Have you? Oh, wait, have I? No, I haven't.
Yeah. I have, but yeah, you're right. I don't see it that much anymore.
They were known for it. They did it on Saturday Night Live. They did it on whatever that New Year's special was.
Who was it? Was it the who started that?
Yeah, they also blew up their drum kit on the Smothers Brothers show and deafened Pete Townsend.
Right, that's right. Jimi Hendrix too used to light his guitar on fire. I always thought that Kurt Cobain had kind of like a Jimi Hendrix. Seemed like he had kind of a Jimi Hendrix obsession,
like a left-handed guitarist from Seattle, like guitar type of thing.
Yes,
I never really. Elaborate.
Well, here's where I'll elaborate on it. As far as I know, and I could be completely talking out of my ass, but this is what I heard.
That's what we're here to tell people.
And I don't fact check. Is that I believe Kurt Cobain was actually right-handed.
What? Really?
Look it up if you got your phone. I'll tell my theory.
Okay.
Sorry, I should have given you the internet password before we started this, so we could look this up quicker. But
we're on Negative Creep, by the way. One of the hidden gems on this album too.
Which I always thought he was saying misheard lyrics. I thought he was saying "I'm an egg in a tree."
You just the title of the album or the title of the song.
I'm an egg in a tree. I'm an egg in a tree. When he
this
gets
one,
to it again.
This one I can get the lyrics of. Am I looking up left-handed? A left-handed.
Oh yeah, is Kurt Cobain? Was Kurt Cobain right-handed? But here's the thing: I heard that in his actual life, Kurt Cobain was right-handed. He just learned how to play guitar right-handed because like it felt easier. And
Reddit thread for it.
What?
It's a Reddit thread for it.
And but here's the thing: some people have credited that he did it because he saw Jimi Hendrix do it, like where he restrung his guitar upside down and thought that was cool.
Yeah.
And tried to basically do the same thing.
But left-handed guitars existed in the 80s, right? Like
yes, but they would have been expensive. Oh. And as you can see, Kurt Cobain doesn't spend too much money on anything.
True.
So I think he tried to like just learn how to play guitar left-handed on a right-handed guitar, but restrung left-handed, like Jimi Hendrix, until he was able to eventually buy his own guitar.
Maybe he was. Oh, continue.
I've also heard a theory too that this is what might have contributed a little bit to some of his back problems, which he had, and some of his depression. Like basically, like training yourself to do something with your non-dominant hand could basically,
it's mentally taxing.
Mentally taxing, right? Like he was just like he probably like I know. Once again, I'm speaking out of my ass on this too, but for the pseudopsychology I've read in various articles has theories that Kurt Cobain might have screwed himself up by forcing himself to play left-handed, even though he was right-handed.
Learning how to play, I love this song too. Learning, because this is as heavy as the drums get on this album.
Yeah.
But like this isn't I can hear Dave Grohl's playing this drum beat, but much heavier. Like that would be more of like a Killing Joke self-titled drum beat. I've tried many times to play the guitar. I can play a few beginnings of songs. It's hard to learn chords.
You can play this one?
This?
Yeah.
I haven't tried this. I guess I could try.
Yeah.
But
you want me to get a guitar? You could try
right now. You want me to try it? Maybe I'll try it when we're done listening to the album.
Okay.
I need lots of distortion though.
I don't have that. I just have an acoustic guitar.
But it is mentally draining to try to learn an instrument. Like you play bass,
Anyway,
it's
yeah.
hard. And
When
like,
you first do it, but then it becomes relaxing. But I don't know. It's weird. What does it do to your brain to force yourself to play with not your dominant hand?
I don't know because
It makes you go crazy.
Probably, because just trying to do it properly is difficult enough for me. But I'm like, what would make this harder? Doing it the wrong way. And it seemed to have worked out for him. But there's also another thing I failed to point out. There are 2 guitarists on this album.
That's right. I always forget about that.
Which is not something that... I guess...
Well, In Utero eventually went back to that with Pat Smear.
He came in after the album was recorded, though.
Oh, well, there you go.
But I think they doubled up on stuff, but I think this is the only one where they really had they really had 2 guitarists, but that's kind of like the Seattle scene at the time.
Right.
But there weren't a lot of trios, I guess. Green Day was a trio.
Right.
But nobody had heard of them yet.
Right.
But Jimi Hendrix Experience was a trio.
Yes. Actually, a lot of these, but Melvins are a trio.
Melvins are a trio.
Yeah, I think your logic's falling flat
It
there.
is,
Also, Alice in Chains were in a trio, but they only had 1 guitarist.
That's true. My logic is flawed.
Yeah, most of these bands only had 1 guitarist.
Yeah. Keeps costs low for transporting the band and gear around.
You don't only have to split money 3 ways. It's the ideal.
Right. How much do you really need a second guitarist on this? This isn't an Aerosmith song. Although Aerosmith was an inspiration of Kurt's for writing songs.
that like one of these songs he was like, they specifically went for an Aerosmith sort of sound, which is a weird.
Well, they do have a song called Aero Zeppelin on Incesticide, which we were not allowed to say on the radio, if you recall. Remember when we were on SOU?
When we were on SOU, we couldn't say incesticide.
I forget what they...
I forget why. Why? What's the big deal?
I don't think we were allowed to say the word incest.
Oh, yeah, probably not.
But there's no way to shorten that.
No.
So it just was like no one would say the name of the band.
Well, that's technically a compilation album. See, that's not a real album.
No.
I always wondered about that. So that's the thing. I always thought Bleach was like that, too. I always thought Bleach was like a compilation album or something.
You think the album doesn't get enough credit for being a Nirvana proper album? I guess because it's not of the classic lineup.
It's not the 2 that everyone knows. Doesn't have Dave Grohl on it.
Yeah,
that definitely hurts it in a little bit.
But these are the seeds. These are the seeds that grew into those follow-up albums.
Somebody might actually argue. I'm sure there's like purists out there who believe that this is like the best Nirvana album. They'd be stupid, but I can definitely picture this asshole in my mind coming up. He's
watching
to a bar.
right now.
Yeah, and being like, these motherfuckers are talking about me. I'm gonna come to their house and kill them. Don't do that, by the way, if you're listening.
Nevermind is too commercial. It's gotta be Bleach. $600, man. Come on.
Oh, we should probably talk about. Actually, there isn't a title track on this, is there?
No,
there isn't.
Oh, the title of the album?
Yeah, the title of the album.
Yeah.
Why is it called Bleach? What's up with the name?
There is signs around Seattle in the 1980s for to instructing people to bleach their works. The quotes, I guess, are just used for effect, like the spaghetti incident, or
the works.
Yeah, like bleach your works, bleach, and I guess that was like.
So what's the works? Is that like
your heroin works?
Oh,
you smack.
So they were going by like the old school, William Burroughs language,
right? Bleach your works.
Bleach your works, there, kids.
Because like AIDS was rampant, so they wanted people to. They weren't going to give you. This is before, I guess, needle exchanges.
Right.
So they were like, "Oh, just use bleach, so you'll get killed by bleach or Nirvana."
Yeah.
But or Nirvana or
Nirvana or Nirvana
heroin.
will sneak into your house and kill you if you don't use bleach.
Did you bleach your works? No, Mr. Novoselic.
Oh my God, you have to die now.
I gotta have Chad Channing come back tomorrow and beat you up. You'll be waiting in your car.
That's a weird. Yeah, that is a weird. I guess I was thinking about this because I actually read that before too. I guess if you put a needle and like sucked bleach up and then spit it back out, and then maybe you did water a couple times, then I guess it would be good. But I was like, yeah, just leaving the bleach on there. It's gross. Don't do heroin. It's gross.
No, don't do heroin. And bleaching your works, I guess, is Nirvana's public service announcement.
But if you're gonna do heroin, I guess bleach your works.
Yeah, do it clean or get new needles, I suppose.
Right.
Sure.
Right. Like I mean, you know.
I don't know.
I don't think I don't think that quite does the trick.
I don't know. Well, it didn't work out.
Or just get a take it like a true American does in 2017. You just get a. I need a bacchiotomy.
It didn't work out well for Mr. Cobain. I'll say that much.
Oh yeah, that's right.
No.
That is what happened.
But he didn't. He didn't die from using it. He used it and then
he killed himself.
Yeah.
With it. Yeah. Oh yeah, that's right.
Kind of like. Not to bring the show down, but we're talking about Nirvana and Bleach and heroin and stuff. So, yeah. So drugs are bad. And,
drugs are bad.
Yeah, drugs are bad.
Probably don't do them as much as you'd like to.
Yeah, because like contemporaries of like we don't no more Nirvana albums now because of drugs. I'm sure they contributed to it. Yes, he did shoot himself, but I'm sure
no more Nirvana albums even back as far as 1990. Was it 5?
Yeah, like Muddy Banks of Wishka is all we were gonna get.
Whole bunch of years of no Nirvana albums.
That was Swap Meet.
What?
That was Swap Meet.
What was
song?
Swap Meet? Oh, that's the name of the song. I'll be honest with you. I'll look it up, and maybe this is a good time to admit it. I don't know this album as well as I should. No, here's the thing. I know all of this all these songs.
Yeah.
Individually, because I had a burnt CD version of them.
Yeah.
But I don't know the names of any of them. So it's Swap Meet. I'm like, I just know this is Heavy Song number 7.
And this song is
not
it's the one after Swap Meet.
Mr. Mustache.
Yes.
Which actually I think I probably would have known if I had waited long enough.
Which is a terrific name for a song.
Mr. Mustache. I like Mr. Heart Attack Man by the Beastie Boys.
Oh.
That was one of their hardcore back when they were a hardcore band. Sorry, I don't know why that came in. Just the idea of Mr. Mustache, Mr. Heart Attack Man.
It's along the lines of this. Beastie Boys, like from License to Ill on, didn't really do hard rock stuff. They just stuck exclusively to rap, which made them tons of money. And they're like, let's stick with this. Let's stick with the thing that does us makes us popular.
No one cares about our hardcore stuff.
No. And I think Mr. Mustache is probably my least liked Nirvana song. Especially on this album. Maybe of all.
I mean, it's not bad. You know what it is, though, about this, and it is true. When these really heavy songs, you do really miss not having Dave Grohl. Like, you know Dave Grohl would have made this probably a lot better. Yeah. But it just sounds kind of weak. With, what's his name? Channing Tatum?
Yes, Channing Tatum on drums. 21 Jump Street on drums.
What was the drummer's name? What was his name? Channing Tatum,
Chad
right?
Channing.
Chad Channington. Yes.
Yes. Which is a guy with abs who was on Nirvana's first album.
What's he doing now?
Chad Channing?
Yeah.
Listening to this show. He's like, oh man, somebody's listening to Bleach? I should look that up, you know. In all of my research for the album, I didn't think of looking up to see what Chad Channing was up to right now.
I bet you didn't even look up to see what...
There's an interesting story if you want to look it up about Jason Everman.
Jason Everman. Oh, wait, what? Didn't Jason Everman eventually end up joining the military?
Yes, he did. He joined the military, and he went to war. And
then he appeared in a Motorhead documentary.
Yes. So, yeah he's...
That's where I remember him from.
He's, you hate to call people the Pete Best of another band, but, like... I guess Chad Channing would be the Pete Best, because he is a drummer, and he left, and they became big after that.
Yeah.
But, Chad Channing. Oh, Chad Channing, I think, ended up... No, he didn't really play for anybody. Because, like, think Dale Crover played for Nirvana for a little while, but like he's been with the Melvins for like forever.
Back when you were mentioned before, is it hard to make song titles? It's not hard to make song titles, but it is hard to come up with good band names, and that is definitely apparent with Nirvana. And before they were Nirvana, they were called Fecal Matter.
Yeah,
which is the stupidest band name.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
It's pretty bad.
And there's also another band called Nirvana. That, like, if you look it up on Wikipedia,
yes,
there's UK
from the
Nirvana.
70s, yeah, UK Nirvana UK.
This is the only Nirvana anybody ever thinks of, though. Like, that other Nirvana's like, nobody cares about us.
It's funny, they did cover a Nirvana song. They actually reunited to cover a Nirvana song. The UK did? Nirvana. Yeah, it's pretty funny. And they covered it, like, in their style, too. Like in 1960s psychedelic style. I forget which song it was. But,
I gotta look
I think
that
it's
up.
Come As You Are.
Oh, well, that's probably makes sense.
Right.
Sifting is one of my favorite all-around Nirvana songs. I know I'm putting a lot of personal touch on the album, but
that's fine.
The middle part of it, I always blow the covers of the story of the album, the song, but once we get to the middle part of the song, I think is my favorite part. But there's a lot of like droning, just kind of chug 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 towards the end of it. I don't know why I enjoy it so much. If it were not Nirvana, would I enjoy it as much? I don't know. It's just it's so different than anything that came after it, really.
Yeah.
It isn't. I think that's what makes this album enjoyable. No, it's not their best album, but it's a very enjoyable album because, like, you've been in bands before and you worked on, you listened to your earlier stuff and then you listen to stuff that you've like done later.
Right.
You're just like you can
it's
see
cool
the growth.
to hear. Right. It's cool to hear Nirvana as kind of more of like a hardcore, like closer to like a hardcore band. Like a lot of this stuff kind of sounds vaguely like their original mission statement, which was to be like the Pixies being molested by Black Flag. And you can kind of really hear it on this, but it's definitely closer to Black Flag.
Yeah.
Later on, they would definitely start to sound more like closer to the Pixies, you know. Another band was a big 80s band that never got particularly big until years later, after they were already broken
the Pixies,
up.
yeah.
Pixies, yeah, sorry. But you don't really hear much of the Pixies' influence on this. It's definitely a lot more...
Yeah.
You hear more Black Sabbath, Black Flag, Melvins sort of influence.
And we reviewed Black Sabbath Paranoid on our last video. You can see it in the link. The link is here someplace. Click on it. It's our previous video. And that's what made me think of this. We were discussing Nirvana on that album, and it made me think of Bleach, which is... There's heavy, like, that time period metal influence on this. Your lies, teacher said, your lies. There's a lot of repetitious lyrics in this. Like, there's a lot of pre-chorus to these songs.
Oh, yeah, it goes on.
And then he just repeats the chorus. I think he wrote it in one night. I think
you believe the more you think about it, you're like, actually, maybe he probably did.
He was like, "Don't have nothing for you," and then he would just wrote X like 6 next to it. He was like, there you go.
Don't have nothing for you.
And then like very long, like weird bridge in the middle of it. This is
maybe.
And there's a weird in the background, which I don't know what that is. What is that? Is that both? That's both guitars.
Yeah, I think it sounds like. Or no, actually, it sounds more like a chord. Oh yeah, no. It's double-tracked, noisy guitar, which is the best type of guitar. Yeah, you're gonna be noisy. Might as well double-track it.
Yeah, this is kind of like a Sonic Youth-y type of thing where they would just go on like this for about.
Also, vaguely reminds me of the guitar solo to Paranoid, where Paranoid has like the lower tones going on underneath it. Underneath the guitar.
Yeah.
But it's taking it to a more ridiculous level.
And they do like the spookiness in the background. It sounds like the solo's like sneaking up on you.
Yeah. It sounds like one of those things at the Halloween store.
Yeah, I can't remember the name of it. Yeah, that thing.
Like the ghost, you walk by the ghost and the ghost starts shaking and Hey, oh, what is that spooky noise?
Oh, is that shifting? Is that a Nirvana song?
Is Nirvana playing in that little robot?
And then the song kind of just snaps back in a Black Flag or in a Black Sabbath type of way.
Yeah.
Where like the middle of Paranoid, and like it just kind of Iron Man, where it kind of just snaps back in.
Do you think if Nirvana had stayed around long enough, and if people eventually got tired of them, which you know that people would have, like a lot of these, do you think they would have played Ozfest?
Nirvana play on
Nirvana? Probably not, right?
I don't know.
Just see like Ozzy and Kurt Cobain hanging out. Ozzy could get him to start doing heroin again.
If Nirvana hadn't gone away, would Lollapalooza have just continued?
Oh, that's a good question.
What
would the festival scene look like with Nirvana on it? Or do you think Nirvana would have broken up, Kurt Cobain would have left the spotlight for a couple of years, and then came back with some sort of embarrassing solo album?
It's possible, but it makes you think, like... You know, like you were saying before, you can't remember the names of the songs. I've had this song for this album for almost 20 years. I still can't remember some of the names of the songs of the. This is Big Cheese. It's the first line in the album, and this one is. I used to sing this to myself at work because I would get pissed off about work, and it's kind of like an Angry Chair like hating work anthem.
Oh yeah.
So like, it's not as refined as Angry Chair, but it's like, kind of reminds me of like Office Space.
Yeah.
What was it? Oh, your theory of what would happen to Kurt Cobain. It's hard to like.
Oh fuck! I broke your CD.
It's hard to say what would happen to an artist if they had lived. Everybody's like, "Oh, this would have happened. Oh,
right.
The band was breaking up." Like,
I think it's easier to say like if somebody had died. Like if somebody had died,
right.
like then it's easier to.
You can write your own story of what you think might have happened, but like. Think of this, and like this is kind of a twisted way of thinking about it, but
let's go there.
It makes sense nonetheless. So look at a band like Nirvana, or Nirvana. Look at Nirvana.
Look at Nirvana. I don't know. Think of a band. I don't know. What should I think of? Nirvana. Those sound like a good band to think about.
Think of an album called Bleach. Think of Guns N' Roses. Guns N' Roses was the biggest band in like 1988 and 1991. And other bands started emerging at the time, and you would have thought that like Guns N' Roses would have surfed that success forever. Like all they had to do was like, oh, we have a follow-up album. We'll release that follow-up album. People will scarf it down. In 1991, they released 2 albums simultaneously at 1 and 2 on the Billboard charts, which in 1991 is impressive considering everybody released an album that year.
Right.
And they debuted at 1 and 2, and they made huge amounts of money. They toured the world with Metallica. They were on top of the world. And then they couldn't produce a follow-up. And then no one really... I mean, like...
Chinese democracy.
Yeah, but they came out 16 or 17 years after the...
What, you're not saying that that's a good follow-up?
It's a... Well...
We should listen to Chinese democracy. I've never heard it.
Really? Okay, that'll be our next album. And
I actually don't really give that much of a shit about Guns N' Roses. I've never heard, and I know you're a big fan, so this might be some sort of blasphemy.
Go ahead.
But I've only really heard Appetite for Destruction. I've never even really listened to Use Your Illusion, besides like the big songs.
Then if that's all you needed to hear about those. We can listen to Chinese Democracy. I'm sure there's plenty of people out there who haven't heard it. Yeah. So we'll listen to it for them. But think about a band like that. Like there was so much. I'm dropping everything. There was so much potential for them, and they just like fizzled out. Like everybody thinks that Kurt was writing a breaking up with the band letter, which is nonsense. Because like who writes a I'm breaking up with my band letter? And like somebody just added this lines that sound like a suicide. Like that makes no sense. Like. Oh, somebody just happened to come along and kill Kurt. They're like, oh, look, he happened to write a letter that mysteriously looks like a
suicide note.
A suicide note. But it's missing something. Suicide note.
Right.
Like, that's where all of the Kurt Cobain conspiracy theories end, is with, like, they're like, oh, well, the
but
note.
He also mentions, like, his family and stuff, too. Although, they also say that might have been added at the very end, too, or whatever.
By him, though. Like, why would somebody else come in and write that up?
I don't know.
If you read the whole thing in context, it doesn't seem...
If you're a crazy, soon-to-be ex-wife...
Yeah, but it just seems like an odd coincidence that he would happen to have written that in the time where somebody was planning on murdering him.
Yeah.
I'm a staunch anti Kurt Cobain conspiracist because I've read this is Downer, which is also like on Incesticide for some reason. It's on 2 albums, which is a compilation. They're like, hey, let's include a song from our first album on our compilation album, our EP or whatever.
No one's gonna have it anyway.
No, most people don't own it. But yeah, I'm a staunch anti conspiracist. I read Heavier Than Heaven, which
that's a great one. Great book.
We're trashing this place. It's
on the floor now.
It makes a case for suicide. It doesn't make a case for he was murdered.
No, I don't believe the conspiracy theories either.
However,
because most of the time that most of what I've seen of Kurt Cobain, it definitely seems like he was an intensely depressed individual.
Right.
No, that's it.
Okay.
But the conspiracy theories are definitely interesting, though. I do have to say, mostly because there's the thing: he was also surrounded by some negative people, mostly Courtney Love.
His wife.
And I could see why.
That's it. Anyway, I don't know how we got into murder.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about murder.
No, we can talk.
The first Bleach. Bleach. The cool thing about Bleach too is that you see a band that has the world ahead of them. They have so much promise. They have their whole lives ahead of them. So I don't want to talk about the negative stuff.
Yeah, you're right.
But
this is the beginning of Nirvana's rise to the top, which would end tragically 5 years later.
I give it about a 5.
5 out of 10. Out of 5.
Out of 7, maybe.
5 out of 7.
5 out of 7.
Your scale goes to 7.
Yeah.
Okay.
For now, it does. It's definitely a 5 out of 7. It might be, or maybe an 8 out of 10.
The original album, 8 out of 10.
8 out of 10.
8 out of 7.
5 out of 7. I don't know.
7 out of 48.
It's 7 out of 48.
The working title was Too Many Humans. Let me see if I can find some of the reviews for this album.
Oh yeah, we forgot to do. We're gonna do. We always like to do. Gotta do contemporary reviews, not any of this bullshit where people look back and they're like, "Oh, I always knew that it was gonna be the greatest album ever."
I feel like there were a lot of more like there weren't a lot of contemporary reviews from that time though.
There probably was. There's got to be at least one contemporary review.
There's a Rolling Stone one. Let's hit up the Rolling Stone. Oh, it's in the album guide. That doesn't count.
No, that's what I'm saying. I'd like to get there's got to be a contemporary review.
From then?
It is hard because I think everybody Nirvana is like a black hole. You can't it's very hard to get a not subjective opinion, an objective opinion on Nirvana at the time. So I think everybody retroactively wanted to be like, "Oh, I totally knew they were going to change the world."
It's becoming a theme of albums that we listen to, the two, is that they're not appreciated at the time of their release.
But I think Black Sabbath, Paranoid, the difference between those things, I don't think Black Sabbath ever really got the same sort of thing. Like, I think it was almost like begrudgingly later on. Like, I even remember reading reviews later on where they were just sort of like, well, for better or worse. I mean, they did create an entire genre of music. I mean, if you take the gross national product of all the metal that's ever been made ever, you got to credit it back to Black Sabbath,
Yeah.
And same thing with the alternative revolution. You really have to the alternative revolution, man. All the music in the 90s, the grunge, a lot of the alternative music, indie rock, even contemporary indie rock, it all owes a debt back to Nirvana.
Yeah. Yeah, there would be I guess would the Foo Fighters now be the biggest band in the world?
Probably not. Yeah, it's weird. I think Foo Fighters. Foo Fighters. Dave Grohl is an excellent songwriter. It's actually kind of funny when you think about it that like the drummer of Nirvana turned out to also be an amazing songwriter in his own right.
Right.
I mean, it's obviously not just like a riding the coattails sort of thing. No one could ride the coattails of Nirvana for that long.
No.
Obviously, Chris Novoselic's whatever his political career hasn't or whatever.
I don't think he did very well. But, I mean, he's trying, so good for him.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't think anybody knew at the time that they would become, that Foo Fighters would. Well, obviously, Dave Grohl was still, like, hanging around in Virginia at the time of Bleach.
We should listen to a Foo Fighters album soon.
I have all of them, so tell me which one you want to... I'm a huge Foo Fighters fan.
I actually don't know anything about Foo Fighters.
Really?
I never gave a shit about Foo
Fighters. You'd be much better off listening to a Foo Fighters album than Chinese Democracy.
But you know what? I also like the idea. We should start listening to bad albums.
You want to listen to a bad album?
Yeah. Or not a bad album, just like an album like who has ever listened to Chumbawamba's Tub Thumping all the way through?
The whole album?
The whole fucking album.
Not just that song?
Not just that song.
I've never done it.
I've never done it. I think we could be the first ones. I don't think anybody's ever done it.
No, I don't think so.
Do you think
either.
there's any hardcore tub thumping fans or Chumbawambing fans?
There's got to be guys who are like in a pub somewhere in England, or they're big soccer hooligans, and they want someone to talk about that album. I don't think there's anyone anywhere.
We could be those guys.
We can be those. We'll be those guys. We'll make a hey, if you have any suggestions, if you like and subscribe to this video, make a suggestion in the comments.
Yeah, suggest what you would like two assholes to talk over.
Yeah, we've talked over 2 albums so far. We've given you fans' ideas of the album. We weren't there when they recorded it. We don't know anybody who was involved in the albums, but we're fans of music, and so are you. We all have this knowledge of what. I think
you're starting to ramble now.
Am I starting to ramble?
Yeah,
Should we wrap up the show?
I don't know what you're talking about, but maybe I'm just a little bit drunk.
That's fine.
I think we should.
We should wrap up the show.
Wrap it up.
I couldn't find any contemporary reviews of Bleach. I think everybody would go back and whitewash them, though. I think everybody with Black Sabbath last week had no problem shit-talking Black Sabbath when that album came out because, it was okay to do at the time. I don't think anybody saw this little album from the Pacific Northwest becoming what it became, and or the band becoming what it became.
Which, yeah, I was about to say, the album Bleach still kind of never really, no one is sort of Bleach. I actually never even hear about Bleach in retrospectives. I can't remember its chapter in Heavier Than Heaven.
No, neither can I. I gotta go back and reread that. Heavier Than Heaven. Check it out. It's you'll be shocked to find out who Kurt sat next to on his plane ride home from Seattle. Or Los Angeles to Seattle.
Who was it? Is it that shocking? Gibby Haynes?
What?
Was it Gibby Haynes?
I'll tell you now, but I'm going to cut it out of the video so people can't hear it.
Okay.
He was with.
Oh my God!